friends with both sides. Oh, and welcome to Let Them Talk. We were having a conversation even as you were dialing in. And of course, Barbara Rosenthal is joining me again. Barbara is a regular on this show, and this must be third or fourth time you've been on the show talking about your artwork, because you're a great guest.
Yeah, I'm not good at numbers either.
Yeah. So welcome back, and you just came back from a wonderful trip. I was following your adventures from your posts on Facebook and all of that, and you were all over Europe. Lucky woman.
Well, not all. I was in the north part.
You would think in the winter you'd go to the south part. Was it very cold? Or didn't notice? You were having too much fun.
My body, it usually stays around 98.6, like wherever I am. Mm-hmm. So I just kind of put some clothing on. Most of the time in Berlin,
Yeah.
in the Berlin spas, you can't actually like wear clothing, but I cover that subject. I'm drafting right now. This is draft 5. It usually takes me 7 of my new column.
Mm-hmm. Oh, who are you writing a column for?
I've been writing. This is my second year now. Writing a column for Ragazine. It's called A Crack in the Sidewalk. It's called that because I started a column for my town newspaper, the Franklin Square Bulletin, on Franklin Square, Long Island, when I was 11 years old, and no one knew I was a kid. But it got cut off eventually because other people started writing to the editor, I asked you for a column, but you wouldn't let me have it. You said no one was giving columns, but you gave one to whoever this is, Barbara Rosenthal. No one knew I was a kid. But it was called A Crack in the Sidewalk. And it waited 60, 70 years, 60-ish years. And I decided to use the same title. So this particular column, still called A Crack in the Sidewalk, comes out every issue, which is now the March-April issue. And it's going to be called Flying High, Lying Low, the Ups and Downs of an International Art Career. So the answers to some of the Berlin questions are going to come out of here, and I have my notes because I haven't finished writing it up.
So tell me all the places you were in Berlin. You were in,
I can read them all.
But you began in the first report I got. You were looking for the aurora borealis in Iceland.
That's right. Reykjavik, Helsinki, Riga, Latvia, for those of us who never knew where Riga was before, Antwerp, Belgium, which had a little assignation there, Brussels, Belgium, and then Berlin, Germany. Berlin, I've been to many times, and I explain how that all happened. Because it all happens by just my making it happen, and I don't apply for things.
What did people, was there any note that when the people, you told people you were American, when they know you're from the United States, do they all, how do they react to you being an American there when you were there? Because I've been hearing stories.
Well, I don't know. For one thing, there's this universal ethnicity of artist. So the artists of the world, sincere artists, not political artists or this, all kind of people who have this narrow thing, but people who are genuinely working as artists from their own stresses of the universe on the soul and psyche, have more in common than anybody from any particular nationality. It's an interesting question because the only time I've encountered a question like that wasn't exactly as American. It was from Charlie Morrow, who set up the Helsinki shows. He's a maybe better known than I am personality. He wears a bowler hat, and his name is sometimes Mr. Bowler. He's a really innovative sound artist, done sound from my pieces, etc. I've only been in his presence 3 or 4 times.
Right, and we've seen your video, your film work. I call it video, but really it's film. You started out as a film artist, or was that later on, or? images and film and
Okay, we're
sound.
going to go two directions. Okay,
Yes.
I'm going to finish with the Charlie Morrow answer about the American story.
Yes, take your time, whatever.
He lives in Helsinki now because he's married to a Finnish woman, but he was mostly New York. He had always been introduced as American artist, blah, blah, blah. And suddenly, with all the incredible anti-Semitism that's happening in the world, he's become introduced as a Jewish artist, which is a little more disturbing. That aspect of my life and background didn't happen, and I was introduced as a guest artist. So the question of being American, the only time I was actually aware and concerned about being an American is when Alexandra Dementieva, who's one of my favorite artists in the entire world and who I stayed with in Brussels and is now, as of March 1st, having a show in New York, her boyfriend came over to my house. He's a computer technician, Russian, living in New York, bringing four packages of electronics with LED licenses. Would you bring these to Alexandra? And I said to myself, holy shit, somebody's asking me to bring 4 packages of electronics through 5 international airports from one Russian to another. What am I, crazy? And when I got there, she says, I am pissed off at you. I am pissed off at you for not bringing. I couldn't even explain the American.
Somebody, when I went to Europe, somebody asked me to bring mothballs. And I said, I'm going to bring a box of some weird chemical, smelly, weird chemical called naphthalene onto a plane and explain, oh, my friend in Slovenia wants mothballs.
I had 6.
Isn't that what Amazon
flights.
for? Amazon's
for 6 flights.
Yeah.
Like what was she going to do if I wasn't coming there?
Yeah.
In the article, I don't mention that, and I separate the differentiation between her as a host, a host in her home, and a presenter, a guest and a host, and the invitation to show my work, present my work at the Nadine Laboratory for Experimental Art, because truly the ethnicity of artist really does supersede the ethnicities of anything else. We do have more in common with each other as artists around the world. But go explain that to somebody who's going to send you to Siberia for I don't deal with politics as an artist. I deal with them sometimes as an individual, and I'm certainly being pressured to deal with them as a Jew. But I'm getting tons and tons of requests from people who are saying it's the duty of artists to produce blah 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 for blah 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 blah. And I write very politely, thank you for thinking of me and appreciating my work, but I only make art that expresses the total the stresses of the total universal stresses, and I won't make propaganda. Like I am no different from a farmer, a plumber, an electrician, a ditch digger, any worker in any field who has a political conviction. We are free to express it. I don't know why people in the arts think it's the duty of an artist to stop making legitimate art and start making propaganda, for the cause. We have no more talent in expressing our political convictions than anybody else. Anybody can twirl the flag, and anybody can, whatever. And once in a while, everybody says, Guernica, yeah, Picasso did, one Guernica. Because at that moment, that was the stress on his life. And, that could happen. But, you know, you follow yesterday's news, you follow yesterday's news, you follow yesterday's news, and I ask sometimes political artists who give me that kind of crap. So what were you, you know, all fired up again about 18 months ago? What were you all fired up again in 1996? What were you, But I know what I did in 1996. I know what I did. You know, I'll go, you know, okay, you want to shoot me in the head for my convictions? I'll go down with a quote-unquote paintbrush in my hand. You know, anyway. You know.
Very interesting. Thank you for sharing. I find that
Like
interesting. It's very important. This is an important discussion that we're having. It's probably one of the most important discussions that's happening in America right now, and we're having it right here on this show on Let Them Talk. Welcome to Let Them Talk. And my guest, Barbara Rosenthal, brilliant artist,
put my name up here
who who just came back from her trip to Europe. And so, are you going to read for us? I know you. Last time we were here, you read for your book. Let me just show folks, if you mind. I hope you don't mind. I just grabbed that.
Yeah.
I was moving us along here. Wish for Amnesia was the book that you read to us from last time you were here.
Did I read last time?
I believe so. it's been a while.
I never have time to review them.
But you wrote this great book, right? But what else have you brought us?
I have written this. I wrote and have written this book for 40 years. I've written this book over and over and over. I don't actually write over. It expands. Every time I read it, I see the scenes with more detail.
Yeah.
I hear the voices with clearer speech. The narrator gets its philosophy. I mean,
this is like how many versions? This book
17.
17th version.
It's the 4th or 5th. I'm not really good at numbers, so maybe 16, maybe 18. Wishforamnesia.com, if I can keep it up to date, has the has the whole list with all the different covers and all that stuff. Can I take this opportunity
you may.
On this show to say that, what's his name? Dan, what the hell of the albino, what the fuck?
You can say that. There's no rules. This isn't broadcast TV. It's not like WBAI.
Dan Brown.
You get
Brown.
Dan Brown from the Da Vinci Code?
See, I got Da Vinci Airport in here. I got an albino cleric in here. I got...
I never read that book, and I should read it because I'm getting into the Freemasons. And so.
I read that book when I heard that there was... I was teaching at... I was teaching writing. I taught a lot of media, photography, video, like 37 years of continual adjunct teachership at like 10 different colleges, continually all over the place. Anyway, I was teaching writing at the College of Staten Island in whatever year that book was published. And I heard there was a book just published with an albino cleric. I didn't freak out when I heard there was a book published with a woman named Jewel, which I had. See, 1985, people. 1985 is when I finished the first edition of this book and started like tripping it out. By 1990, I had an agent named Gunther Stolman, who was Anais Nin's agent at the time and the editor of her books, and he started sending it around. So it was getting out. And so this was like, I don't know, 1990, blah, 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 when I heard that Dan Brown had published a book with an albino cleric. And I thought, gee, that's interesting and freaky because my character Beatrice becomes an albino cleric. She goes through many transformations. And I wanted to see what he did. I didn't consider that there was any overlap or, I just wanted to see what he did with his... Well, the book was, so I went to the library. I didn't want to buy it yet because, I have already over 7,000 books in my library, and I usually buy the books that I read, because sometimes I notate in them, or I don't actually write in the book, but I put bookmarks and I transcribe into my journals. Well, I grabbed the request form from the library, and there's 200. I won't say fucking again. Damn, there's 200 relationships between Dan Brown's book. And I know he's been accused of plagiarism and blah, blah, blah.
Oh, yeah, the whole book is giant plagiarism from hundreds of years of books have written before him. It's a mashup, really.
Well, I knew that I've had a collaborator for many years in video and bearing children and other things named Bill Creston. And his father was once dumped out of the back of an ambulance and went from a nursing home. And when we tried to ask a lawyer whether maybe we could get some money for him and get him into a better place, the lawyer said that he's 92 years old. His life does not have a monetary value. And unless you can prove a monetary value, you don't have a legal case. So I just...
Love and affection and the things a person has done before in their lives, raising a family and kids, that doesn't count.
I didn't want to spend the time finding a lawyer who thought it did.
Yeah.
So when I saw all this stuff from Dan Brown, every time I came across a page, I just wrote it down and put it in the file and, on blah, 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 whatever piece of napkin I was reading on, like whatever, because I had no way to prove to a court that I lost anything by his stealing all my ideas.
Right.
And words and
it's always the way it is.
And other things, So, I don't know how this actually, conversation is really interesting. It goes in different places. We were going to talk about my
right. Let's talk about but that's talking about how Dan Brown stole.
Dan Brown's going to sue me for demeaning his goddamn. He better not because.
Well, a member of the Supreme Court today said that we should look at changing the libel laws so it's possible to more easily sue. So rich people and celebrities can more easily sue people who defame them, right? Today you have to have absence of malice. If you say something about somebody that's wrong but you didn't mean to hurt them, they don't have a case. They want to change it to be like England, so if you say something wrong about what they construe as wrong about them, they can then sue you. That's what they're trying to do now.
I'm having trouble these days following the negatives and positives in sentences.
Yeah, I know. That was a tough one. That's all right. That's all right. Don't worry about it. Let's go. Let's talk about what you have 10 minutes left. Let's talk about what you got there.
10 minutes left?
Yes. So let's make use of these 10 minutes.
So what do you want me to do? So you want me to talk about my my trip to Europe, or you want me to talk about my novel Wish for Amnesia? You want me to talk about my book Homo Futurus, which I wrote in 1986, and now it's becoming true that the next hominid is going to be genetically engineered?
Why don't you read that? Show us how you were ahead of your time, which I already know is true.
Well, it doesn't really happen that way. This is a novel thing. So, the pages are about what the hominid.
Is something coming up that we want to promote that you want to talk to people about?
Okay, wait, my postcard. Okay, yes, what's coming up? Okay, my show at the Mitchell August Gallery of surreal to conceptual morph photography. It has been extended through Sunday, February, you're writing this down, 24th, which is this coming Sunday. I will be there, in the flesh, from 4 to 6, and I'm going to bring some wine, so I'm not the only one that's drinking that day.
Okay. Thank you. We thank you.
I may even bring...
Us gallery rats who come to these things, thank you. That's all right. You're doing good. That's all right.
Okay, I'm not even on the website. I don't even know what's going on. I mean, people know about this show.
So where's the gallery located?
Okay, I will read it to you because you're not going to find it by looking it up on his website. It's 132 Delancey Street. Enter on Norfolk, please, because you'll never find it if you look.
Oh, that's where I just was, right? That was the show that was extended. It's still going on, right?
They extended it.
Oh, I saw you at that show, right? Okay,
Yes.
great. That was great. All right, good.
He was supposed to be the whole back room, but he...
It's right off at Delancey on the corner, and you go upstairs, and it's on the second floor.
Yeah, but you got to go up on the Norfolk.
Yeah, the Norfolk Street.
I was supposed to have the whole back room, and it was going to be like a beautiful little jewel box with all the
Oh, your own thing, right?
Things all over the walls in these beautiful different places, but he left this big brown, I feel very depressing, painting up there, which when I asked him about it a couple of days ago, because people have been saying to me, what is that doing there? He said, well, it's been there a long time, and I can't find room for it in my storage unit, so I couldn't put your things up on the other wall.
Oh, wow.
Like, I don't know.
And I'm sorry to hear that. Because you had a great show. I love your stuff. It's great stuff. You always have great stuff. Your video, I saw your film. Your videos, based on your films from the 1960s and 70s, was great.
70s and
80s. Okay,
I'm
sorry.
70 and a half. I didn't make films. The only film I made in the 60s, I made with Wayne Simpkins, who was my college boyfriend.
Right.
One of my college, but not the one I married. I would have been at my anniversary.
Today would be your anniversary if you didn't dub him.
I still have the Farberware pots and pans, though, that his aunt gave me.
That's nice.
Yes, I've had my same set of Farberware pots and pans since December 1972, which was our engagement. And I came home from this thing, and the person who stayed there made the bottoms of 2 of the pots and pans. Like, I had to spend time scouring them.
So read something nice to us. You're such a good reader. We only have a few minutes left.
Okay, I will read to you. I'm gonna say a page number, and I'll read the page number.
143.
143. Keep that number in mind. But I will tell you that on Thursday, 2 days from now.
Today is Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, day after tomorrow.
At 5:30 p.m., I will be reading at the Tompkins Square Library on 14th Street between B and C, I think, some portion of this book. I'm making a videotape of the entire reading that I read in different parts of the world, and that's what I haven't read yet. So 143?
Yeah, right.
Okay, 143 is in the chapter 20, Caroline at the Drugstore. I'll start from the sentence before, which is on page 142. It's not what she wants, she heard him say to the clerk as they enjoyed the beggar's pother of mixed glee at the gifting, but disappointment at the gift. Be grateful you get anything at all, Caroline thought, bitterly and smug, the adage she had been raised on. But as she left the store, a rise from the Valium and marijuana finally eased her up and offered pleasant expectations in more happy anticipation of the party. A few true friends would be there, and Jack Rubin. This party tonight was in his honor, in honor of her husband, for his new appointment at the UN. She reached Beatrice's corner again, this time from another direction, and as she did, she saw Jack turn onto the opposite end of the street. He bounced along on loose-jointed legs, cool and neat, smiling as always. He was wearing a glowing new white cambric Brooks Brothers shirt. One of his hands was palming a joint. The other was swinging the old cowhide briefcase that never left his side. He was listening to its straps and buckles slap out time for the tunes of the voices in his head which never ceased drumming him. Look at yourself! Look at yourself, Mr. Big Shot! The voices cranked out their mocking cliches for so many years, pursuing him relentlessly. And since his appointment, the voice of the petty accuser had risen to a feverish pitch, repeating its incessant refrain. What do you mean? 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 Jack had long studied by now the meaning of the voices themselves, and the test would come tonight. It was put up or shut up time. As he had written to Beatrice so long ago, he knew the voices meant he had no right to lead until he had the perfect plan. And this voice is making me cough it up.
Speaking of, beautiful. You're a great writer and reader, and you've been working on this book 15, 16 versions.
40 years. I'm a good reader because I was New York State poetry reading champion in high school, of high school students. And I was trained by a wonderful guy. His name was
I sort of knew you as a poet. When I first met you, it was really through a scene of poets, right? I considered you a poet.
That's pretty funny. I was introduced as a poet.
It was later on I discovered you were an artist, visual artist.
I was introduced as a poet in Brussels. It's funny. Media poet, I've seen in print since the Village Voice in the mid-'80s. I use words a lot. Words are like everything's like turns it into words and ponds it and blah, blah, blah. But as far as actually writing poetry, it's the easiest, snappiest of all the media I work in. That is the, and of all the media I listen to and go to, and, it's the one that I sort of appreciate the most. The good
last 20
are
seconds,
really good,
what do you want to leave us with the last 20 seconds?
Come to see, BarbaraRosenthal.org is my website. Wikipedia, I'm the only Barbara Rosenthal. There are many others in the world, which I get all kinds of Google things.
Thank you, Barbara, for coming on. Really appreciate you coming on. You're always welcome to come.
Oh, I'll come back.
Good.